Okay, I am here at the Adam Butt Farm, and we are looking at the Adam Butt house here, um, which was a part of Adam Butt's farm and his schoolhouse. Now, Adam Butt was born on November the 10th, 1810. He died on October the 16th, 1897, at the age of 86. His wife was Nancy B. Butt. Now, the large farm consisted of a stone house, which is this one, that was built in the year 1835. And there was also a brick schoolhouse, which still stands today, just down in that direction where you see the cars going by along Route 16. It's covered by the trees. That was also built in the year of 1835. And then there was a barn that sat right here on this corner. And that was built in 1835, and an outbuilding in 1842. Now, it was situated along Hers Ridge, and it ran from the schoolhouse up toward these buildings, which the entire farm consists of. Then it passed to the left of the house out toward Black Horse Tavern. Though this was primarily used as a Confederate field hospital, there were 6 confirmed Union burials and 38 Confederate burials on the property. The left side of the farm was heavily wooded, and his neighbor across the street was Isaac Johns. Isaac Johns lived on the Fairfield Road just across the street down there in the distance from the schoolhouse. So again, this is a look at the Adam Butt Farm and a little bit about Adam Butt. And as I go through the property, I'm going to just now walk around and take a visual. And I will post a map of what the property looked like, a hand-drawn map, which I sketched myself, so you get an idea and a perspective. But here is the Adam Butt house here. Again, the barn actually sat right across the street here. And then down in the distance, where the Fairfield Road crosses today, right here, you'll see these trees here. And today, there is still the 1835 stone schoolhouse, which we will take a look at in a later video. But this is the Adam Butt house here, and we're just going to walk around the house. The house is currently unoccupied. I looked inside, there's nothing in there. Somebody actually cares about it because they do cut the grass still. But this is the Adam Butt farm, and it once contained all this property, this wooded area, and then all the way down to the Fairfield Road, near and across from the Isaac Johns farm. This has been part 1 of the Adam Butt house and farm and schoolhouse here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Adam Butt Farm, and in our next part we're going to take a look at the barn area. Now, the barn and the outbuilding are no longer here. The outbuilding sat right here, and the barn just to the left of it. And as you can see in the distance over here, here is the Adam Butt house with the well and the spring house just to the right side of the house. And then down the road in the distance would be the schoolhouse, which we'll take a look at later on. Now, Surgeon Henry Augusta Minor of the 9th Alabama set up his field hospital here at the Adam Butt barn, and he cared for the wounded in the barn. But if these wounded passed and they died, they would be moved over here into this area, into the woods, and they would be buried between the barn and the schoolhouse, which sat along Fairfield Road. So you can put yourself back in later July after the battle, 1863, and right here in this field that sits vacant today was once a barn that the surgeon of the 9th Alabama, so the amount of suffering that happened right here in this field today. And though it may be lost to history as far as the barn is concerned, we do have the record of where the barn sat and mapped, so we can definitely pinpoint the area. There was again a outbuilding that sat here, and then the barn, which became the field hospital, was right here. So this is where the men, the Confederate wounded who were suffering the most, they were at here. This is where their suffering happened. And then when they would die, or if they passed away, they'd be moved just over here into the wooded area and buried. So again, this is our next part of the Adam Butt farm, as we again take a look at Adam Butt's house here from a distance. In the location where the barn used to be, this is our next part of the Adam Butt farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Back here at the barn area once again. Now the wounded and the dying remained in the barn and the farm until about July 15th of 1863. So the field hospital that the surgeon of the 9th Alabama set up was here from about July 2nd or 3rd of 1863 to July 15th. And a few of the men actually stayed here until August. Now, some of them were transferred to other hospitals, such as, Camp Letterman, but most of them were transferred to hospitals outside of the Gettysburg area. But again, this spot here was where the surgeon for the 9th Alabama set up his field hospital, and there was an outbuilding and a barn right next to it. And this field hospital pretty much remained here until July 15th of 1863. As the men would pass away or die, they would be moved over here into the wooded area and buried. This has been our next part of the Adam Butt farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Here of the Adam Butt farm and schoolhouse, we are actually at the schoolhouse, which today sits along Route 116 or the Fairfield Road and Fair Play Road right here. And there is a sign that marks the property. It says Adam Butt Farm and Schoolhouse, Wilcox and Wright's Brigade, July of 1863. In the distance, in the center of the camera, directly in the center of the camera in the distance, you can see the old Adam Butt stone house, which was a part of the farm. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it now. That is the Adam Butt house. And then this, where we're at here, is the schoolhouse, marked by the sign. And I'm going to go around here so we get a good look at the schoolhouse, but I'm going to talk about schoolhouses here in Adams County. In 1834, there was a law that was passed about public schools, and then their placement within the counties of Pennsylvania. Now, the Butt Schoolhouse was one of 7 in the Gettysburg area. The wooded area that's behind the schoolhouse was actually the location of most of the burials that happened here from those Confederate brigades. And as we come around here, we're going to see the front of the schoolhouse right here. A few of the soldiers, again, were buried behind the schoolhouse in the distance in the woods. But this is the Adam Butt Schoolhouse, which was a part of the Adam Butt farm. And one of the original Civil War buildings sits here at 1715 Fairfield Road. This has been our next part of the Adam Butt Schoolhouse here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Next part of the Adam Butt farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. And I am now walking in the wooded area of the Adam Butt farm. And this is going to be the area where Confederate soldiers, about 38 of them, and 6 Union soldiers were buried in the woods behind the Adam Butt Schoolhouse, which is in the distance over here, just after the battle. Now, these burials would remain here in the woods from 1863 until about 1872, when a man named Rufus Weaver began to collect the Confederate dead. He would box up their remains, and then he would send those remains down to southern cemeteries and to southern families. And this is the area that these 38 men from the Confederate Army, at least, were buried. We don't have a lot of information on Union burials, but the Confederate burials were buried in this woods. Amongst them was a man named Private Charles N. Dean. He was of the 3rd Georgia. And he was removed on September the 24th, 1871, and taken to Laurel Grove Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia. So he was one of the Confederates that was buried here. Another was a Private David H. Moncrief. He was also the 3rd Georgia Company K. He was wounded in the leg. His leg was amputated here at the Adam Butt Farm. And he died on July the 12th, 1863, in that barn that sat right over here. And as I turn, you can see the Adam Butt Farm here in the distance, and in the field was the original barn. So David Moncrief died in that very field on July 12th, 1863. His grave in this wood was still marked in the year 1866 with a wooden headboard. And he was also disinterred on September the 24th, 1871, and taken to Laurel Grove Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia. There was another man named James A. Dorse, 3rd Georgia Company B, mortally wounded. He died on July the 7th, 1863. And again, his grave also was still marked here in the woods by 1866. People would come back here and they could walk in this wooded area, and they would see these wooden headboards sticking out of the ground from these Georgia soldiers. And then a man named William Gregory of the 3rd Georgia. His grave was still marked in 1866, and he was also removed on September 24th, 1871, to Laurel Grove Cemetery in Savannah. Elwood S. Aaron, 3rd Georgia Company G, grave still marked in 1866, and he was also taken to Laurel Grove Cemetery. He's actually buried in lot 853, plot G12, down there. Now the bodies, like I said, were most likely disinterred by a man named Rufus Weaver. And Rufus Weaver, between 1871 and 1872, removed a lot of Confederate dead that were buried in old field hospital sites and had their remains boxed up and sent down south. So we have arrived here at the location of which was the Adam Butt Cemetery. And it sat right here in the Butt Woods here in July of 1863. So all along this area right here is where this cemetery was. 38 Confederate soldiers and about 6 Union soldiers buried here. Today, just over here is the Adam Butt Schoolhouse, and then just over here sat the barn and the outbuilding, and still today is the stone house. So again, this is the next part of the Adam Butt Farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. The Adam Butt Farm, we're going to talk about another little story connected to Adam Butt. Now, Adam Butt put in a government request for $3,000 worth of damages that happened here on his farm that was used as a field hospital for 5 or 6 weeks. But his damage claim, as most damage claims, were turned down by the federal government. Adam's son, Nathaniel Butt, had enlisted in the Union Army on August the 7th, 1862, in Gettysburg, and he was with his regiment, the 138th Pennsylvania, at Harper's Ferry during the Battle of Gettysburg. He was a private in Company B. He was tall, had brown eyes, and he was promoted to corporal on January the 1st of 1865, honorably discharged on June the 23rd, 1866. Adam, Nancy, and Nathaniel would live here after the war. They would run the school and the farm. Adam died in 1897 and is buried today with his wife at Lower Marsh Creek Presbyterian Cemetery in Gettysburg. This has been our video series on the Adam Butt Farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours.